Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for being here. Thanks, Simon, for that presentation. I'm going to talk about feelings. That's my particular area. So I've entitled it Feelings, Faith, and Facts, How Religious Experiences Form a Tenuous Foundation for a Whole Bunch of Truth Claims, and what they are really. So I think it's no surprise that Mormonism is a feeling-based religion. I think we have all experienced that, especially with references to feeling the Spirit of someone's testimony, reading the Book of Mormon, feeling a witness, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go into quite a bit of detail with that. I'll try to keep it short, like maybe 20-25 minutes max, try not too long. But I hope it'll be interesting for you. So I'm going to start out with a quote. This is by Sam Harris, which sort of sets the tone for this meeting. He says, "Everything we do is for the purpose of altering consciousness. We form friendships so that we can feel certain emotions like love and avoid others like loneliness. We eat specific foods to enjoy their fleeting presence on our tongues. We read for the pleasure of thinking another person's thoughts. Every waking moment and even in our dreams, we struggle to direct the flow of sensation, emotion, and cognition towards states of consciousness that we value." Okay. So, what are religious experiences? They are subjective experiences that are outliers from the normal everyday experience. So, mostly very positive, but there are a certain variety of negative experiences. Now, I want to make this a bit interactive. So, by a show of hands, how many of you are quite confident, quite sure that in your experience with Mormonism, you felt what is called the Spirit? Like you've been to church, you've had that feeling, right? Oh, everyone, pretty much. So, would you agree that it is kind of an outlier? That's probably the reason we go to church in the first place. Because there's something there, there's this feeling that we're capable of experiencing in connection with our beliefs, but when we're at work, we're not feeling that feeling. Or when we're at the pub or at the park, we don't feel that feeling, right? So that's the pitch, right? That's why we go to church, as Sam Harris says, to direct the flow of consciousness in this direction. So, there are various types of religious experiences, and it's difficult to compare and contrast them because they're highly subjective. You know, how do you describe what it feels like to feel this burning in the bosom? There's a story which I'm sure you've all heard, this whole general authority who's on the plane with an atheist, and the atheist asks him, you know, you say you feel this feeling, the Holy Ghost, what does it feel like? And he gives the analogy that I can't describe that feeling to you, just like if someone had never tasted salt, I can't describe what salt tastes like. I'm sure you've all heard that story, it's quite common in Mormonism, but it's true. If you've never felt this feeling or had this experience, it's difficult to describe it to someone else. Now that's not unique to religious experiences, that's unique to everything. I mean, if someone has never, let's say someone was unfortunate and they've been born paralyzed. Well, how do you describe to that person what it feels like to walk? It's not really possible. So it's just the nature of subjective experiences that they can't be described. They can be categorized, we can create a common language where we've described them, but it's difficult to explain to someone who's never had them. So the most common type described within Mormonism is the feeling called the Holy Ghost or the burning in the bosom, right? Now, within Mormonism, they're called spiritual experiences. Most often in the outside world, they're called religious experiences. This is a sort of terminology difference. I don't think there's any significant difference between these two terms. I just think Mormons like to think that they're special.
They're not.
So, okay. Now, why are they so significant? Let's talk about the foundational elements of a truth claim. So in a religion, any religion, most religions have some kind of authoritative figure. You have Moses, Jesus, Muhammad. Often that figure writes a book. If the figure doesn't write a book, then it's difficult for the religion to survive. You need the writings of the original figure. Now, this divine book could be the Bible, the Quran, Dianetics, if you know about Scientology, the Book of Mormon, the Divine Principle, if you know about the Unification Church. There are all sorts of books out there, and they're all written by the original person. But what's interesting about Mormonism and some other religions is that they've added a second layer to this foundation. It's not just assume that what this person says is true, but there's this ask of God. Like you can ask God if what this person says is true. Now, on the surface, that actually makes a lot of sense. That's quite a logical thing to do and to say if you believe God exists and He can answer your prayers. The problem actually comes when you look at the data, when you look at the results of that happening. So again, this is heavily emphasized within Mormonism and many younger religions. Now, I found what's interesting is older, more mature religions tend to shy away from this method. And I think the reason is that time has taught them that the results are inconsistent. And so if you rely exclusively on feelings, then you get sort of wild results. So that's why they're shying away from that. Cool. I'm going to read you some quotes. So, have any of you read this book, Preach My Gospel? Yes. If you look at mine on my shelf, it has all these markings like crazy. I was really into this book. So let's talk about the LDS narrative. So there's almost no better place to receive, to look at the formal contemporary narrative than from Preach My Gospel, because it's the training manual for missionaries. This is a quote. The Book of Mormon is powerful evidence of the divinity of Christ. It is also proof of the restoration through the prophet Joseph Smith. An essential part of conversion is receiving a witness from the Holy Ghost that the Book of Mormon is true. As a missionary, you must first have a personal testimony that the Book of Mormon is true. This testimony can lead to a deep and abiding faith in the power of the Book of Mormon during the conversion process. Have confidence that the Holy Ghost will testify to anyone who reads and ponders the Book of Mormon and asks God if it's true with a sincere heart, real intent, and faith in Christ. This witness of the Holy Ghost should be a central focus of your teaching. So it's not that when we criticize the church that we are making up this narrative. It comes from the church. The idea to ask of God originates from the church. It's their formal, explicit narrative. So here's another quote from the same section. Many people will not believe everything you teach. President Ezra Taft Benson taught how the Book of Mormon can be the central resource in responding to such situations. Quote, we are to use the Book of Mormon in handling objections to the church. All objections, whether they be on abortion, plural marriage, Seventh-day worship, DNA, it's not included here, but basically hinge on whether Joseph Smith and his successors were and are prophets of God receiving divine revelation. The only problem the objector has to resolve for himself is whether the Book of Mormon is true. For if the Book of Mormon is true, then Jesus is the Christ, Joseph Smith was his prophet, the LDS Church is true, and it's being led today by a prophet receiving divine revelation. As you answer concerns, there's a bit of tautology here, but as you're answering concerns, remember that our understanding comes from the modern prophets, Joseph Smith and his successors, who received direct revelation from God. Therefore, the first question for an investigator to answer is whether Joseph Smith was a prophet, and he or she can answer this question by reading and praying about the Book of Mormon. So it is the explicit foundation, it's very clear, there's no exception, everything hinges on it. It's like a door, this is the hinge, divine witness. Okay. So, let's talk about how we critique the church on an intellectual level. So, the church is attacked. Luckily, we live in an age where that's not physically, like it's more intellectually. The church is attacked from different angles. There are different categories of criticism. The first is social issues. For example, impact on society, the LGBT community, impact on families, individuals. So social issues aren't necessarily focused on whether it's true, they're focused on what it does to people, the pragmatic side. So really, they aren't primarily concerned with truthfulness, except to say, you could say, I don't think God would allow the church to impact LGBT people like this. Then there are historical issues. So the behavior and conduct of early leaders, you could say, I don't think Joseph Smith would take other people's wives, and so on. Historical inconsistency, so this is the difference of the modern narrative to the ancient narrative. That's where people like, I forget his name, Breakoff Group, recent, very fundamentalist.
Mark Jeffs.
No, not him.
You think of Denver Snuffer, but
Denver Snuffer.
I think he's a fundamentalist.
Yeah. But people like Snuffer come from these inconsistencies. Difference of modern narrative to old narrative. Right? And historical facts that yield contradictions and affect credibility. We're talking about the Kinderhook plates, and things like that. And then there are intellectual or scientific issues. Right? So this is probably one of the larger categories. You have issues with the Book of Mormon, anachronisms, DNA, lack of archaeological evidence, idea cross-pollination with Joseph Smith's backyard. You have Book of Abraham issues, the translation mismatch, 6,000-year-old Earth, etc. Right? But the question is, how do LDS people respond to these multiple angles of attack? This is the answer. I've had a spiritual witness. I picked the Captain America specifically, right? Because the spiritual witness is the American vanguard protecting the church's true claims, right? Because as you know, the Garden of Eden was in Missouri. Okay, but I'm sure many of us have had this. You know, you're telling your friends, "I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that." They'll say, "I've had a spiritual witness. I know it's true." End of story. Right? Doesn't matter, right? All of the research that Simon Sutherland has done, all the years of science, doesn't matter. I've had this witness. Ignore. So this is my slide to say, how do LDS church members respond? I just ignore everything. I've had a witness. Okay. So, yes. Yeah.
Can I just say on that, Shawn, too, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I guess if somebody's going to just say, this is my experience and I'm happy with that, I'm happy with that
fine,
too.
yeah.
That's fine. I guess where I tend to have an issue is then when they say that I'm wrong because they've had that experience, and I think most people would agree with that. And I think that's where you get this feeling of they leave the church but they can't leave it alone. That type of thing comes in with that. Like, well, I know it's true, so everyone else should as well. So, that's like if when that adversely impacts my experience, that tells me something different, then I have an issue.
That's great, and I'll get to that. So let me just take a moment to digress slightly. This whole presentation is like a sales pitch for my podcast. So
it's okay, mate. I'll subscribe.
So I think some of you may have listened to my podcast that it's about religious experiences, and part of the purpose of that is to give a new narrative that is secular in nature that speaks about religious experiences. And to your point, I released an episode not long ago that speaks about the personal significance of experiences. So regardless of what you or I think the nature of these experiences is, there's no doubt that they have impact on your life, right? They're outliers, they're unique experiences. So I'll talk about that in the end, but the problem comes when you make objective claims based on subjective experience. That's where the problem is. So we say, because I felt this, therefore the universe is a certain way, right?
Correct.
And that's exactly what the problem is. These claims that are just way out there, right? They're just nothing at all connected to what we feel. But there's a match, right? When I was a missionary, I was taught that you should identify the spirit, which is really just a conditioning pair. So when you're teaching someone and they feel something, whether that be the softness and sincerity of your voice or so on, then you tell them, what you're feeling is the Holy Ghost witnessing to you that this is true, and therefore this and this and this. So you pair up a feeling and a conclusion. That's exactly where the problem is. Yeah, I think we all agree on that. Yeah. Okay, so So my argument is the most direct way to critique the church is through religious experiences. And the interesting part of this is I don't need to be as good a scientist as, say, Simon Sutherland is. Because speaking about this is far more subjective. You merely need to show that other people have the same experiences. And you've already done 99% of the work to show this unreliable. But yet, I think that this is an area spoken by, at least when I look at Fair Mormon's website, the amount of apologetics around history, DNA, archaeological evidence, it's huge. But when you go look for stuff about the Holy Ghost or people of other religions, it's just only a few small articles, right? So I feel like this is an area that as people who criticize the church, critics, we have sort of failed to emphasize what's actually most important, what's actually explicitly the foundation of the church. So, yeah, most focus on other areas. But again, it's very wishy-washy. Subjective experiences are difficult to talk about. They're difficult to categorize. It's not easy science. Okay, So there have been some compilations online about religious experiences and people having witnesses. I just want to find, has anyone not seen these before? If not, I might show some of it. Have all of you read the CS letter?
Yes.
Yeah. There's a link in the CS letter that says "Follow the Spirit." And it's a YouTube video.
On YouTube, and he's very beautiful.
Music.
Yeah, but he's got a very smooth
Yeah.
and soothing voice.
Yeah, that's the
And I
guy.
want to believe what he says.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
See.
That one. So maybe if I show you just
You're
a few
a sucker.
seconds of it, you'll.
Into the next cult.
Yeah, there are two. Okay, so right now I have managed to find two compilations. I won't play the whole thing, but basically they're just testimonies from people of different religions, speaking about the experiences they've had. And what's most striking is extremely simple: is to see, hey, I converted to be a Jew, and the experience I had was powerful and amazing. And you see the sincerity in their eyes. So these are pretty recent, though. To be fair, like if any of you have.
After the Lord showed me how common...
If any of you have transitioned within the last, if you transitioned over 5 years ago, these didn't exist back then. So, okay. Skip ahead. This is pretty good information. Okay. You don't mind if I just play the whole thing, right? Just the one.
It
I'll
was
pause it.
to fall into error and bias. I felt my mind was finally open enough to sincerely listen to my brother's concerns, and with the Lord's help, bring him back to the church. But Dwayne didn't leave simply because of bias. Most of us are Latter-day Saints because we know something that outsiders do not know. We've experienced something unique.
I began to read the Book of Mormon and pray to know for myself. And it was a simple prayer. And as I'm having the feelings now, I had the same feelings then. It made me cry. I was crying and I didn't know why. But there was this wonderful feeling that had come over me. And it was very clear to me. God was saying, it's true.
At the end of the Book of Mormon, Moroni promises that we can all read the book and ask Heavenly Father to know whether or not it is true. This model made so much sense to me. We, as children of God, were unable to determine the truth on our own, so Heavenly Father provided a way for us so that we may know the truth. The method was easy: to simply ask our all-knowing Creator in faith, and He promised to answer by the power of the Holy Ghost. Through this method, we may know the truth of all things, learn the correct path, and be guided to return to live with our Heavenly Father. I had tried this method for myself. After carefully reading the Book of Mormon, I prayerfully asked God to know whether or not it was true, and I too experienced the Holy Ghost, which confirmed that the church was true. My brother Dwayne also had this experience. I knew he was a man of faith, sincerity, and integrity, so what went wrong? Why did he leave? The problem was he came across a second Nephite record. I found an archive called the Mantina Archives, and contained within it was a book called the Book of Haggai. It felt whole and building, and it testified of Jesus Christ. It says in the preface that I should ask God if it's from Him, pray about it, and He would tell me if it's true. I prayed about it, and I received a confirmatory feeling, just like I had felt with the Book of Mormon, that the Book of Haggai is good and true and valuable, just like the Book of Mormon. I couldn't distinguish that feeling from anything else that I had felt previously. It was a spiritual confirmation. And I remember kneeling down in my living room and just crying. The problem was, this record turned out to be false, a complete fraud. So, in my brother's eyes, he felt his spiritual experience had let him down, but he had the same experience with the Book of Mormon. So, how could he know which prompting was of God and which prompting was not? I took some time to ponder his question. If Moroni's promise was not true, what other model could possibly make sense and fit all of the experiences I had and many others? The best alternative model I could come up with was that perhaps people were asking themselves a question, and an unconscious part of the brain was capable of generating its own response in the form of a powerful spiritual experience. So I asked myself the next question. Which of these two models were actually correct? It seemed likely that only one of these models could turn out to be true. I didn't want to doubt my spiritual experiences because I felt it would be like betraying God. But if somehow these experiences were not from God, then surely I would be better off knowing the truth so that I could be guided towards further light and knowledge. If this alternative model were correct, things would look very strange. It would predict a number of things. It would mean that our minds are much more mysterious and far more powerful than I'd ever imagined. The world would be very odd because it predicts that people would receive differing spiritual experiences that would point them in all sorts of opposing directions. Because spiritual experiences have such a powerful effect on the mind and heart, it would be very confusing when opposing experiences find each other. For example, if a Catholic had an experience that told him his church was God's only true church, it'd be very confusing to meet a Latter-day Saint who had a similar experience that pointed him in a different direction. Because both could not be right, the Catholic would be tempted to invalidate the Latter-day Saint experience. If each sect applied this logic, it would only create discord and serve to trap each one further in their worldview. I wondered if there was any evidence in support of this alternative model. There was an LDS breakoff group that I was curious about, so after some effort, I got a hold of one of the apostles of this church. What he said floored me. He had experienced the same thing I had, a revelation from God that confirmed to him that his church was the only true church. I investigated another LDS breakoff group and came across this recording.
I've been searching for a witness of this work and of this church, and just tonight I got my witness, and it's burning within my soul on how important this work is and how true it is. I know it is, and it's hard to believe that just a year ago I was in high school, and now I'm in a plural marriage and struggling. But I know, without a shadow of a doubt, that this is the Lord's work. That I finally found it. I say this in the name of Jesus Christ.
Okay, I'm just going to pause that because this video goes on for a while. So, how many of you have seen the whole video before?
It's too disturbing.
Not many of you. Right. Okay, so you haven't seen it.
I loved her testimony, like it was so powerful.
Yeah.
Like, because it's not right until the end, like it sounds like every testimony you hear on a Sunday.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Yeah. So I still remember when I was doing my research, I had slept in the afternoon, so sometimes you have an afternoon nap and then you can't fall asleep in the evening. So I was doing research and I watched this at about 11 o'clock at night. I barely slept the whole night, like after watching this video, because it just disturbed me so much, because it was just so sincere. Now, I would love to watch the rest. I'm just going to give you the link if you want, because it takes up some time. But basically the rest of this video and the other compilation are exactly like this. Just testimonies from various people, various religions. They're all very sincere. They all speak about the experience. They all have the light in their eyes, with the intensity of their belief. So, and that one that just showed, as you said, you wouldn't realize that it was not a Mormon one until the moment you said I'm in a plural marriage. And then you realize, oh, this is not what I was expecting. Bait and switch. So actually, I want to show you just one more testimony, quickly. I know these videos quite well because I've researched them a lot.
How do they come full circle and prove the church is true?
What do you mean?
Are they not from the church?
No.
Oh, right.
Oh, did you think they were?
Oh, I'm really confused.
No.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, this is from someone who's an ex-Mormon.
Just trying to show.
Yeah.
This process.
The whole series is beautiful. That's only the seventh. That's the seventh video, but the whole series is very interesting. Yeah. So I just want to show you one more conversion. This is about this sort of light in someone's eyes, because I don't know if you've ever heard, but this is a John By the Way thing. You can say, oh, the missionaries have this light in their eyes, right? Well, that light is probably just conviction. It's a sincere conviction for something. And it wasn't until I watched this video that I really felt someone had
started
it.
to fall together
So
where I just
it's up.
felt like I had found my way home. I have a very short answer
to people who ask me why on earth would you want to convert, to Orthodox Judaism, and I say because God told me to.
Having converted not once but twice, first to Reform and then to Orthodox Judaism, Rabbi Shmuley Yakovitz is something of an expert on conversions.
Both of my conversions were incredibly intense and transformative. And in my experience as a rabbi, this is the norm.
That's it. So there are, of course, many more, but that's the point. So again, I didn't know that not all of you had seen those compilations, because I think that they're in the CS letter, it references them, but they're very interesting. Cool. So yeah, let me go across to the sales pitch. So the model that the LDS Church presents is that the feeling shows that it's true. Now there is a need for a competing model. Like when you show that other people have religious experiences that they interpret to mean their own church is true, all you're doing is showing that the former model is broken. You haven't built a competing model yet. So that's what I'm trying to do, because this is an area that interests me most. So there needs to be a scientifically based model that explains how we feel. Now a lot of work has been done on this. There was a study recently where they took in believing LDS members, I think I shared it, they put them in an fMRI scanner, and they shared with them general conference talks and music, the kind of thing that would trigger that religious experience, and they showed which parts of the brain were affected. Mainly the reward and pleasure centers were affected. So yeah, this is actually a quote from the study. Broadly, our findings are consistent with the view that religious experiences may be described through known neural circuits mediating cognitive processes such as reward, social cognition, attention, and emotive processing, rather than through a novel category of experience. So I'm running out of time, and I'm just going to sort of skip ahead to the end here. I have some information here about a couple of different types of human experiences, but because of time I'm not going to go through all of them. The point is that there is some information about different feelings that you'll have. So I'll go to one that's relatively well known, I think, which is elevation. When I was a missionary, I remember my trainer would go around telling people, you know when you help an old lady across the street, how you feel good inside for doing that good deed? Well, he would say, that is God telling you that it's a good thing that you're doing. Well, this emotion is actually called elevation, and here's the definition straight from Wikipedia. It's an emotion elicited by witnessing virtuous acts of remarkable moral goodness. It is experienced as a distinct feeling of warmth and expansion that is accompanied by appreciation and affection for the individual whose exceptional conduct is being observed. Elevation motivates those who experience it to open up with, affiliate with, and assist others. Elevation makes an individual feel lifted up and optimistic about humanity. So there's a whole TED talk about the subject of elevation, which is very interesting. Now there are a number of different ones, but I really am keen to go through them, but don't have time. But basically there are different responses that have been understood, and more research has been done that describe some of the subjective dimensions that we feel, some of the things that we've all felt in church. I'm just going to skip all of this. Well, I'll speak about the God helmet for a second. This is interesting. Okay. If you go Google the God helmet, you'll see pictures of this, but basically it's a helmet that stimulates certain parts of the brain that we know are associated with religious experience. And so people who have had that put on have described the kind of experiences they've had. And it creates a religious experience. I want to try it out. I haven't done it. I would love to try it out and compare it to the experiences I've had in the past, but I don't know how to get one. I think they're just for sale.
Is it hooked up to anything, or you just wear it?
But yes, it creates, I think it uses, I'm not fMRI expert or anything, but it uses magnetic fields to create, to stimulate certain areas.
It's not to stop them reading your mind like the CIA and FBI.
Yeah.
That's tinfoil.
Oil.
I mean, then the connection between the brain, the mind, and subjective experience is extremely well known. I mean, people have found that depression or certain feelings can just be stimulated if you know exactly which part of the brain to stimulate. So it's no surprise that if we know which part causes us to feel those feelings we associate with God, that you could stimulate them. But I can't say for sure that it feels the same because I've never experienced the God helmet. Right? So, and I don't have time for near-death experience. Okay, so I'm just going to go to the end here with a quick quote. Sam Harris, there are 4 very prominent atheists. One has passed away, but 3 very prominent contemporary atheists. Sam Harris is one of them. He's probably the one that spent the most time in this area of subjective experiences. So when he was in his 20s, he went to retreats in India. He's a meditation expert, that kind of thing. This is the quote. Oh, I never realized I duplicated it here. But it's this quote that I want to point out, which is really the heart of the problem. He says, "As a general matter, I believe we should be very slow to draw conclusions about the nature of the cosmos on the basis of inner experiences, no matter how profound they may seem." So that's my simple conclusion. Cool. So that's my presentation. Thank you, everyone.